Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.
Good evening and welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. I'm excited about getting another chance to hang out with you this Tuesday evening as we're getting ready to close out the year. Hopefully you guys are having a good year and you have a little bit of time to really close it out strong and be ready for next year. Tonight we're going to be talking about an important topic. We're talking about 3 things business owners don't know that can hurt them. Definitely it's important to know things that you need to know, but also you need to know things that you need to not know or not to stay away from. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to focus on, some a little bit more on the administrative, because a lot of times we sort of overlook certain items that can be a problem for us in the future. So we're going to talk about 3 of them tonight, and excited about having my guest, Paul Paray. He's got a lot of experience working with entrepreneurs in terms of compliance and cybersecurity and other things. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are the 3 key things right now that you as a small business owner need to know in that space. So let me invite Paul on real quick now. Hey, Paul, how are you doing tonight?
Good evening. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, definitely glad to have you here tonight. Look forward to having an engaging conversation with you.
Hope so. Thanks. It's interesting when you say what you don't know. It's always what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. So basically, the more information you get, and that's why it's good to be here, since you focus on a university that helps small business owners. It's a pleasure to be here. Just to give you some background about my history and work experience, I started out as an attorney a number of decades ago. Working on Wall Street and learning from a large firm. So it's always good to start out large. You get the experience. They've developed the protocols, the procedures, the processes that you need to learn to be as efficient as possible, but also to get the best work product out the door. So I had the privilege of working at a Wall Street firm. Unfortunately, it's no longer in existence. It was founded in 1817, Lord Day Lord, on Wall Street. And it unfortunately made the decision to get into a big lease in Midtown just as they lost their biggest clients. And they were a casualty of the heyday of the 80s and 90s, where a lot of money was spent improvidently, which is not what small business owners do. So I learned there and eventually worked at other large firms and started my own practice. And that's when it became a lot more fun, a lot more energy, had partners and decided to do things a little differently. So the focus has always been on helping those that had a tough time getting counsel and learning how to best utilize what resources that they could muster. So over the years, I've helped one small business owner that was founded in the 1800s, continuously ongoing. And what they did was make leather tools equipment. It's kind of funny though. When you go into their factory, they're in Harrison, New Jersey, and they use these metal tools that were purchased all around the world, and they're specially custom made for leather craftsmen. And they were hit with Superstorm Sandy, and they had a big mess on their hands, and they were getting bullied by the insurance company. And so my firm was able to help them out. And so that's really what I've done over the years. And now sort of transitioned to a company that helps small business owners with compliance. Very exciting topic. Compliance is something that most small business owners really don't care too much about because they're looking to increase their revenue and decrease their expenses. And compliance doesn't really fit into that lane very easily. So that's something that can be discussed very easily when you think about how it can improve your bottom line. So those are the things that have motivated me over the years. And I don't want to necessarily just start getting into the three topics or the three things business owners don't know that can hurt them. But if you'd like, I'm more than happy to jump right in and talk about them.
Okay. Well, let's hold off for a sec. Definitely excited to have you on the show and look forward to covering those. But before we do that, I've got a video about the Small Business Pro University because, definitely we're doing a lot of great things here. Not everybody knows what that is. So we'll play a short video and then we'll come back talking small business with Paul here. Many small businesses experience low or no revenue growth, and the owners are not making enough money. I founded Small Business Pro University to help you break that cycle by empowering you with greater knowledge and enhanced skills to lead your organization more effectively. Over the past 15 years, I have collaborated with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Rising Tide Capital, Empower the Village, NJMEP, Rutgers University, and SCORE to work one-on-one with over 1,000 business owners and teach tens of thousands of people about business. My experience includes serving as a naval officer, managing businesses, graduating from MIT, earning an MBA from NYU, and achieving the CFA designation, which has prepared me to accomplish my mission of helping 1,000,008 business owners to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth by 2028. My vision is to create the ultimate business ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Small Business Pro University empowers entrepreneurs like you to run their businesses more professionally and create sustainable enterprises. We employ my proven proprietary Masterpreneur playbook framework to guide your journey along the Masterpreneur path and facilitate your Masterpreneur evolution to work on your business and scale faster and easier. Small Business Pro University provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and relationships that will help you to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth. Our Masterpreneur initiatives include the Small Business Pro Network, 100+ expert-led multimedia courses, intensive training workshops, Spanish language training, Leadership Live at 8:05 live stream and podcast, in-person Power Breakfast events, and advisory coaching, consulting, and training services. All right, good evening. I'm back with Paul Paray talking small business. 3 things that business owners don't know that can hurt them. One thing that a lot of business owners have been hearing about, especially this year, is the BOI, And, what is that? It's something that's required by the end of this year, but not necessarily anymore. So we're going to talk about what that is, what the requirements are, why that's important. So first, Paul, what is the BOI?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to thank you for your service, both your military service in the past and also for your service right now, helping small business owners. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And to answer your question, BOIR stands for beneficial ownership interest in a company. So the statute that's applicable is the Corporate Transparency Act. It was enacted in 2021. Originally it was not passed, and then they added it to a defense appropriation bill, and they were able to sneak it in that way. And the statute really is it's quite unique because it's an act of Congress that touches local law. Local law being the registration of a business. And so they did this statute because they were having a tough time getting all the shell companies that were committing fraud and financial, crimes. So what they ended up doing was creating a statute that now required all beneficial owners to get a report out describing what their ownership interests are in companies. So the way it works right now, I'll get into the Texas case and why it's not, if it's sort of been suspended for now, but I'll still describe what it is because I do think that case will be reversed, and I'll explain why in a second. But the statute requires you to file a report with FinCEN, which is the financial crime network of the Department of Treasury that is tasked with investigating these crimes. A lot of it has to do with money laundering. So the shell companies that were created had various names. It was tough to figure out who owned what because there's layers of that. So what the statute does is requires the owners, the actual beneficial owners, to file this report giving descriptions of their residence, their date of births, a picture of their driver's license or their passport, as well as their residence. So this information now is collected by FinCEN, and it's broadly given to a number of entities for law enforcement purposes, including foreign entities. The law enforcement foreign powers can be accessing this data. Now, they have to have a purpose, but it's not the same sort of requirement that criminal prosecution requires. So it's a little bit less of a standard to get that data. So once they have that data, they can use it to determine who owns what and help with their financial fraud investigation or the criminal investigation. So these reporting companies now have no duty as of today, December 17th, to disclose anything because there was a Texas decision that decided that the statute was unconstitutional. Well, actually, technically, it was an injunction request, and the court there said that it was likely unconstitutional. They didn't make an actual decision on that because it's a motion for injunctive relief. Nevertheless, the injunctive relief was granted, and the court said you cannot enforce it to FinCEN. So FinCEN is now not requiring enforcement of it, which means basically you do not have to file as of December 17th. But, and here's the big but, there were 37 million companies that had to file. I think it was like 9.5 million, 9.8 million have filed to date. And so when this case does get heard by the Fifth Circuit, because the case is in Texas, and that's the appellate court in that jurisdiction, it would be more than likely overturned. And the reason why, and I won't get into the weeds too much, but I'll just say that the standard that was applied, that the court applied, was that it was facially a unconstitutional statute, potentially. You look primarily at the 10th Amendment of the Constitution and said it was violative of that, but it did not cite a Supreme Court case that was decided in 2024, the Moody case, and that decision really puts forward a very aggressive standard for that type of view, because basically what the court said is in any instance, this statute is unconstitutional, not just with the plaintiffs in front of me, but in any instance. And when that standard is applied, it's rarely granted, but when it is applied, you have to look to see if there's any constitutional arguments for the statute being lawful. And that court did not do that standard. And the 11th Circuit is hearing a case right now in Alabama. Alabama court came up with a similar ruling. I think that it's 54 pages. This court in Texas was 79 pages. They start with lofty quotes about things that are unrelated to the case. And then they go with this whole long analysis about how improper it is, and yet they don't apply the correct standard. So neither case, they applied that specific standard. In the 11th Circuit, I listened to the oral arguments, were, very much inclined to reject it. I mean, they even asked in an order, asked them to discuss this Moody case, the appellants in that case, because the district court judge there did not deal with it at all. Couldn't have dealt with it because it actually was decided afterwards. But it seems clear that's probably going to be the case. You can't predict the future, can't tell what a court will do, what an appellate court will do, but more than likely it'll be reversed. So anyway, that's where that BOIR stands right now. And it's, something that probably is easier to just file and deal with it that way than waiting to see what the Supreme Court ultimately does in the future, and when there's a logjam of everybody filing at the same time.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I guess I need to do mine. I was hoping that I didn't have to do it anymore.
Well, technically, you don't have to do it. Don't get me wrong. FinCEN, as a matter of fact, we have an API with FinCEN, so we can file directly with FinCEN, and we have to put a disclaimer that says that according to this order, you're not required to file, but you can voluntarily file, and we're appealing it. So they're sort of nudge winking that, it's probably not a bad idea to do it now, get it out of the way. But, you technically do not have to do it.
Okay, excellent. So now, certain companies have to do it and certain companies don't. So we got a question of, how does this affect larger companies?
Well, larger companies that have over 20 employees and 5 million in revenue do not generally have to file. That's assuming that this order was not in place. I mean, if this order was not in place, and if you're a larger company, because the thinking is you already have to disclose this sort of information, so they can get it. This is not really impacting larger companies. Also, if you're inactive. If you're an inactive company and there's 6 criteria in that, then they don't really care, because if you're inactive, then you probably don't have the assets and you're not moving money and you're not money laundering and doing all sorts of things like that. And the other exemptions, and there are many other exemptions, all really talk to if you're a nonprofit under 501c, or if you're like an insurance company, a broker dealer, other companies that do get highly regulated and do disclose their beneficial owners. So the threat isn't nearly as great as the smaller companies.
Okay, so so where can you find those 6 things that will allow you to not have to do it? Or
we have an FAQ on our website, license.com, licenz.com, the FAQ that talks to a lot of these issues. If you want to go there, FinCEN has also a website that has a lot of resources. So I believe it's fincen.gov/BOI that you can go there. So there are different resources that exist. But in terms of what those are, inactive, you basically have to be formed before 2020 because they want to time it so that you were formed before the statute was in place. You don't in the past 12 months haven't conducted any business, don't have any assets over $1,000. There's certain things that make sense to have in place to see whether or not this company is active or inactive. But frankly, most of the companies that we've dealt with and filed for are active, even though they say, hey, we're not doing any business and we're about to liquidate. But it's clearly under the standards they would still have to and did report. So as it stands right now, those are probably the two greatest exemptions. We have a filing platform that we use and we give to companies we work with, CPAs and others that are trying to advise their clients. But again, I don't really want to push too much on the BOI because of the Texas order that is in place, because it's sort of like, I'll educate you and I'll tell you where you can go and let's file it. But, the fact of the matter is that call has to be made by the business owner, and I don't want to seem as if I'm pushing in one direction. I personally would file because I know the way how slow it was before the order was in place, and because it was a backlog, and then how quick it is now. And I could just imagine when the case is reversed, which in my opinion, again, that's just my opinion, just one person, it's going to be a backlog again. So it's just easier to do it now.
Okay, great. So I added your website. So your second website, license.com. So that's where you have the information about the BOIR. So that's in the chat for anybody who's looking for it.
Thank you.
So, okay. So that was number one. So what's number two? Is that cybersecurity, or what do we want to cover?
I think the number one actually is not BOI. I think it's HR, another acronym. And I think companies that are formed today are now in a regulatory environment, it's highly challenging, to put it mildly, for a business owner to know what they can and can't do in terms of how they treat employees. The old golden rule should be applied, treat others as you want to be treated. But even in that case, it's not good enough. So you could still see problems occurring. Like, for example, if you in the past had posters on your walls, and then you had a time in which a lot of people were working from home remotely, you would think, well, I don't really need those posters as much anymore to update them because people are working from home. That's not the way it works. The federal government and state government have gotten wise and have said that now you need to give them notice digitally of what their rights are. And so those are things that get complicated, because if you think about it, what small business owner really, takes a deep dive and says, well, do I have the right poster? Did I give them the right notice? Did I, you don't think about those things. So I would advise, and I have an affiliation with a payroll company. I sort of share office space. Our company shares office space with them. And so I would advise going to a human capital management firm, a payroll company, and trying to get some experience in taking advantage of that. In New Jersey, the company that I'm referring to is Counterpoint HCM. So if you go to counterpointhcm.com, you'll see that they're the ones that I've over the years have turned to, but there's others too. And I've worked for other payroll companies over the years and helped them out. And I can tell you, they do have a real good feel for this and in terms of what to do. So reach out. That's a good cost-effective thing to do also, because you can't really always have access to lawyers. A, they're too expensive, and B, sometimes, they're not the right place to turn. Your accountant, for example, might be the better place to turn for certain of these questions than your attorney. And most small businesses don't even have an attorney, by the way. It's not like they have a go-to lawyer that they speak to. So,
so definitely, there's a lot of companies that offer a library of information If you're going on like payroll companies, you've got Legal Shield and other legal organizations that, many attorneys, small business owners, it makes it affordable for you to have one. And a lot of some businesses use the what is it called, PEO, so where they delegate their HR responsibilities, but there's still things that they have to do on site. So
yeah, PEOs are really, in my experience, you have to be very careful if you choose going that route. It's not for everyone, and it's you may lose out on some benefits without even thinking it through. The grant opportunities, things that you wouldn't normally intuitively think of. So your best bet is to talk to other business owners, or get some of the resources you have, and then I would suggest joining groups that are doing things similar to you, associations that share information and exchange information. That's a good way of getting vendors and figuring out vendors. Which is a good segue, because I could talk about vendors, I guess.
Okay. Well, while we're on HR, another question for you. So, with on the HR side, you mentioned that you want to treat people the golden rule, but also, I think hiring the right people and onboarding them the right way can make a big difference as well. And what type of guidance do you give people on hiring and onboarding people?
Well, we're talking about New York, New Jersey area. Employees at will is sort of the norm. You rarely have small business owners hiring people with contracts unless they're in the sales role. And then even then, it's not really technically a contract. They give you an offer letter. They have suggestions as to what sort of compensation you would have. And if you meet those milestones, you get that compensation. Talk about your commission rate, that sort of thing. But in the letter, more than likely, if it's done properly, it says you're an employee at will. So that's really something that you need to take in consideration. What state you're in. Like I said, in these states that are around where we're talking, you are an employee at will very easily. You just need to make sure that it's clean from the beginning. Also, keep in mind, like for example, in California, you can try to be a independent contractor, but more than likely you'd be considered an employee there too. And it's interesting, the FTC tried to change all of the non-competes that were out there and saying that they were outlawed. And I know there's some recent cases that sort of said that is, again, unconstitutional from the perspective that it's intruding on person's ability to contract. But, that's an area where small business owners need to be careful when they do put in non-competes into their contracts. One thing that you can get around that is just have a confidentiality agreement. So those are freely enforceable. So if you have a confidentiality agreement and you have an NDA that's in place with someone who's an employee, then you could use that as a stick to get at the employee if they leave and try to work against you in another company. Also keep in mind, in certain states like New York, for example, there's a fiduciary duty to your employer, so that it's sort of what that means is a common law duty as opposed to contractual, which is made between parties. The common law is made between basically courts. The judges make the law there. So just keep that in mind. You have fiduciary duty, so that protects you a little bit. But more than likely, most relationships are driven by contract in some ways. So HR on the onboarding process, which is what you just said, is very, very important. And also the boarding, so to speak, when an employee leaves, and how that process goes forward. What sort of release do you need? I find it that sometimes you're leading to a problem when you're asking for a release, because then the employee says, well, wait a second, what am I giving up? And then, then that starts the negotiation process. And it's probably not a great idea in all circumstances to ask for a release. And I'll tell you, an NDA stands for a non-disclosure agreement. My apologies for not describing what the acronym is, but I can tell you right now, though, you're better off not asking for a release in certain circumstances than asking for one. So be careful about that. And also, when you do ask for something at the end of a relationship, make sure you have counsel review it, because if you don't have certain disclaimer language in there, and there's a cooling off period in terms of how many days that they have to stew over the agreement, then there's a problem. So that's why you almost open up a can of worms when you go that direction. And the best way to do it is to just have a good relationship. So even if they leave on good terms, which is not always the case, but that's what I would advise. That's probably the best way to do it. In terms of other HR matters that come up, obviously, if you treat someone disparately, which means basically in different terms than other employees, and if they're in a protected class, and you treat someone improperly, even if you don't have a malicious intent, okay, let's just assume you're not malicious in any way, but you do it, and it's almost to you as an employee, as an employer, you do it imperceptibly to your employee. That is just you're going to lead to problems, and it's just not the right way to do things. And that's something that training really helps on. And so I would just advise, if you don't do internal training of your staff or employees, that you do internal training with online courses, just to understand a little bit better how you should interact with your employees. Because if you don't do that, it could lead to problems. I've seen a number of situations where, the joking around, everybody thinks that everybody's on the same page, and then fast forward a year, and that joking around leads to a near 7-figure settlement, because the joking around was completely improper, but at the time you didn't think it was improper. But the best way to I think do this, if you're in management and you don't have an HR manager, and that's another reason why, by the way, a payroll company or a company that does HCM or human capital management is helpful, because you get a service, and yet in addition you can get these ancillary services that you don't think about, the HR services, for example. And so if you don't have an HR manager and you don't have someone giving you counsel as a vendor trying to help you out, then you just need to have this absolute rule in your mind. And what's that absolute rule? It's simple. Treat everybody neutrally as possible, and it's sort of like it's a sterile business environment. That's all it is. This is business, and just do everything with a smile, and don't try to be funny, and because you never know, your joke you think is funny is actually really rude, and it's hurtful to someone. So you never know. So this is like with public speaking. Don't try to crack jokes, because you're going to fail. You're not a comedian. So I would just say that's probably the easiest approach.
Okay, so if you're going to do jokes, do Rodney Dangerfield jokes. So where the joke is on you.
Yes.
So
those are the only exceptions, and you read my mind. They're self-deprecatory. They're making fun of yourself. Then it's okay.
Yep, and he was one of the best at that.
Yeah.
I always love his movie Back to School. So cool. So now, you were heading towards compliance as the next step, I believe.
Yeah. I think I wanted to talk a little bit about intellectual property 'cause I've done
Definitely.
a lot of
Okay.
intellectual property over the years. And that's another area where I've noticed small business owners really don't have enough of an interest. And just to give you some background, I don't know how many years ago, it's at least 15 years ago, I was invited by the Chinese government to speak at a conference where there was over 500 small business owners. And the Chinese government wanted me and a bunch of other guys and a few gals to speak in front of this group to teach them the American way, how to make money using intellectual property. And the reason they did this is because they saw it as being effective in the US, and they wanted, like a lot of other products and services that are co-opted in the Chinese mainstream. They wanted to, see if that could work. Now, culturally, the Chinese people are not really in tune to intellectual property. So, like, for example, I know some folks that have done a lot of business in China, have done a lot of things over the years, and have learned. And I was given this example once recently, and I was told, there are tour buses that would come here, and they care about certain things, and they'll buy certain things, but other things they won't buy. And it's interesting to see how that plays out in the real world. So when I spoke there and I learned, they just conceptualized patents and the value in licensing anything. But what was interesting is there's more lawsuits that were in China than in the US. It's just a much smaller dollar amount because the valuations were much smaller. So they always have disputes. There's a lot of disputes in China. So they have a lot of patent lawsuits, more than in the US. But the dollar amounts are much more compressed because they don't see the value. They don't see how it gets inflated. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is because they were trying to figure out, small business owners were trying to figure out a way to monetize what they had. And that, that was part of the discussion, was to assist them in that regard, and to tell them some of the things that they could be doing to squeeze some money out of what they were creating. Fast forward to today, and US market and small business owners today, I think it's somewhat similar, frankly. I think the US market and most small business owners are in tune to revenue, in tune to cutting expenses, in tune to growing in a managed way. There's a lot of day-to-day that needs to be done. And there's not much room for intellectual property, at least the discussion of intellectual property, or the consideration of it. So what ends up happening is, unfortunately, you don't have trademark applications being filed that should, whether it's state, like we're in New Jersey. In New Jersey, you should absolutely file for a trademark application on a state level. It's easy to get. You don't have an office action that you get. It's almost, a trivial process. So it's something that I would advise all companies to get if they're using a logo or using a brand name in any way. They should definitely file. And on a federal level, it's actually fairly easy to get a federal trademark registration, or at least apply for one. That process is not terribly difficult. There's a lot of resources online that could help you. The fee for filing is relatively minor. But the problem is, and here's where you get a little bit of a sticky point, there'll be an office action from an examining attorney at the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office, that basically is going to say either that there's a likelihood of confusion, or a likelihood of confusion with another mark, or it's too descriptive, that this is something that you can't get a trademark on because it's too descriptive. Those are the two primary ones. Over the years, I've dealt with many of them. I actually have a pretty good track record there. Know which buttons to push, and get them to back down. And but I could tell you that is where there may be a little bit of a barrier, because you can use LegalZoom online, or you can use other services to file, but then when you have the office action, if you don't have good counsel to assist you to fight back against the examining attorney, then you might not get the trademark. But it's definitely worth the exercise. I would say no matter what, you should protect your trademark, because that's one of the lifebloods of your business. And I've seen over the years many companies say, "Oh, I don't care about that. I'll just use it." It's true. You do get rights by merely using it, but when you want to protect those rights and grow something from those rights, you do need to register and get acknowledged value from there. So I would strongly urge everybody to do that for their names, their brands, as well as for copyright. That's also underutilized quite a bit. I mean, if you have some material that you're generating, training material for in-house staff, even anything that you're generating, try to get a copyright application filed. It's, again, not that difficult to do. That's more akin to like the state trademark. It's almost perfunctory. You're going to get it. You just have to fill out the application and make sure you dot your I's and you do a good job with the application, and you should get it. Not a big problem. The fee is relatively small. It's smaller than with a trademark. Not much money, but it's definitely valuable because without it, you can't sue, and also gives you value. So what's another benefit? I'll tell you what another benefit is. Over the years, I've helped companies be acquired. And those companies, small business owners, grow, and then they get acquired. And it makes the owners quite happy because now they have a good amount of cash, and then they can do other things. But one of the things that was acquired was the intellectual property. So without a doubt, make sure you get, if you're looking through the path of a acquisition down the road, make sure you get as much intellectual property created as possible, because that's part of the value. It's not just the goodwill, the name, the use in the industry that they're purchasing. It's not just the clients, it's also the intellectual property. And because it's intangible, you can't touch it, right? It's not like a bulldozer. It's not like a building that you purchased. It's intangible. Most small business owners really don't focus too much on it. They can't touch and feel it, so it's not as valuable. But trust me on this, it is quite valuable if you're looking to sell your company down the road. It's something that in every single instance that I've ever dealt with and represented a seller to a buyer, that's part of the due diligence. I mean, they actually look at the trademarks, they look at the copyrights, they look at what sort of intellectual property you have. They look at the, and I mentioned earlier, NDAs. They look at, who you're interacting with, make sure you protected the trade secrets, because that's what an NDA does. It protects your trade secrets, which is another form of intellectual property. Really, there's just very few forms of intellectual property. The most important are the patents, and I won't get into patents. A, we don't have enough time, and B, most business owners really don't have to worry about that. Trademarks, probably the second most important, and then the copyrights that you have, and then the fourth, the one I just alluded to, is trade secrets.
Okay. So now you mentioned, trademark in New Jersey and federal. Should you get both?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Even if you get a federal, you want New Jersey as well.
Yeah. Well, state, New Jersey is a state. It'll help you within the state. The federal will help you nationwide. So it helps throughout any part of the country. And it's fairly easy to say that you're using it in interstate commerce, which is one of the criteria. It's fairly easy to say that it's implicated, across state lines. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay. And so, you've got, I've worked with a lot of people who are starting up their business or early on in their business. And, do you need to apply for that stuff up front, or should you use it for some time? Is it detrimental to not apply for it up front. Definitely when you're starting out, a lot of times you're thinking, well, I could spend my money on marketing, or I could spend it on, that you have, tight cash flow is
Yeah.
tight. How critical is that to do, and how soon should you be thinking about doing that?
Well, the marketing and your trademark go hand in hand. So let's assume you develop a marketing strategy, you use a name, you're a startup, you use a new name, you spend X amount of dollars doing it, you buy Google AdWords, you do everything, and then it turns out another company has that exact same mark and you didn't do a search. And then all of a sudden, all that work building up your mark is wasted. So you want to make a determination early on whether or not you have something that can be protected, and you want to file, because in the US now it's first to file with the trademark. So if you have that trademark, it's also with regards to patents, it's first to file now. It used to be different. It used to be first to invent, but now it's first to file. So I would absolutely, if you're a startup, to make sure you have the domain names, get some misspellings of the domain names, just in case, so you get the traffic, the right traffic, and absolutely make sure you have a trademark filed. I would think it's borderline negligent if you don't. If you have a name of a company, you want to protect that name, and you want to assume you're successful, right? You want to assume that you're going to do well. You don't want to assume that you're going to do something that is not going to be noteworthy enough to get a trademark application. So I would definitely do that.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so no, that's good to know. And definitely protection is key, and like you said, it does give your business additional value.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we didn't discuss is cybersecurity, which is another area that most small business owners really don't focus too much on, sort of like intellectual property. But I would strongly advocate revisiting that approach, because from what I've seen over the years is that small business owners have been attacked much more than you thought. You really, the underbelly of cybersecurity issues is the notion that it's only large companies that get hacked, or it's only the government that gets hacked. That's so not true. There's a huge amount of small business owners that get hacked, and the reason why, think about it a second, is there's a lot of overlap between the personal, security that you have and the professional or the business side of it. And so, they can gain access to certain things much more easily. And that is very valuable. So as you're growing, you become a sweet spot for hackers. And don't think that you're being targeted. Like, they're not looking for you, Andrew. They're looking for everyone. And the way they do this is they send out these bots that go out to find out open ports, for example. And I've seen this. And over the years, I've done a lot of these data breaches. So I've represented companies that have been breached. And so I work with a forensics firm, and they do an analysis, and we generate the reports, and then we get coverage from the insurance companies and ransomware attacks. And I'm telling you, going through the nitty gritty of these reports and seeing how it takes place. And there are a lot of common issues. So if for a small business owner, you don't need to know all the nuance. Just understand conceptually that the notion of you're only as strong as your weakest link really applies. And so if you were to think about cybersecurity, just think about it in that vein. So what's your weakest link? Well, your weakest link could be a vendor that you're working with that doesn't have any clue as to cybersecurity, and yet you're giving them all sorts of information to access all sorts of things that are important to you. That's a good example of it, but there's so many more weaker links in the employee base. So that's why training, and I've used a firm called Know Before, and referred them out to clients over the years. Know Before provides training for small business owners, and what they do is they test you out. So if you have a employee signed up for it, what they'll do is they'll send you a phishing exploit, and phishing is just a fake email that tries to tempt you into doing certain things. And so they send it to employees, and then whoever fails the test, now and then they have to do training. And so that's one thing that they do. They're excellent in that regard. And over the years, I've seen commonality of what it takes to do this the right way. And it's sort of like you have to unlearn things, okay? Because what we've learned over the years is click, 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 and not really think too much, because you want the satisfaction of seeing something quickly. And when you have to unlearn that, it's not that easy. But what you have to do is look at the URL of the email, and if you see it's like 15 numbers at gmail.com, even though it says it's from Google, or it says it's from Microsoft, or it says from TD Bank, but then you look at what the URL, that'll help you understand that all of these scams, and some of them are superlative, by the way, they've gotten better and better over the years, but they send it out, and it's very cheap for them to send it out to literally millions and millions of people at the same time. So that's one avenue that I think is easy for people to fix. Well, I'll take that back. Not easy, but it's something they should put on the top of their list. It may not be easy, but it's something that they can easily put on the top of their list to fix. There are a number of other things that can be done, but to get into that level of detail is much more than the 8 minutes we have left.
Okay, definitely. And actually, last week I got an email from somebody I know, and unlike a lot of them, I clicked on the name, and it was his real email address too. So sometimes they take out. But it's
spoofing. That's spoofing. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded weird what he was saying, because it wasn't normally what we email about.
Yeah.
So
that happens all the time, because they go after one person to go after another person to go after another person. So that's why if let's say, for example, if a nation wants to attack you, they will do it. Not a problem. Nation state attacks against high level officials happens all the time. I was at a conference years ago, and I thought it was hilarious. Well, not too funny, but a little funny, that this FBI agent was talking, and he said he was making fun of or critiquing this Russian ransomware gang, and he was quoted in an online story on Wall Street Journal. And so by the time, before it became print issue, all of his bank accounts were depleted. So they got him like that. And it's true. I mean, because they basically can go after the weakest link. And the weakest link might be your kid playing on a PlayStation with a password on a Wi-Fi. And all of a sudden now that's the weakest link. And then you go from there, and then you go into the house. And you figure out what the passwords are there, and then you look at what passwords they use at home, and then you travel to the work, and then all of a sudden now you get access to networks. I mean, it's so many silly things happened over the years that I've seen. Like, for example, even in sophisticated companies like Equifax, sophisticated company, right? They had a major breach. I won't pick on them. Let me just say that there are others that have this sort of scenario where they have software that they've purchased, they've used, but they don't change the default passwords. And then all of a sudden, all these bots, they find these open ports, because you literally have hundreds and hundreds of ports connecting to the internet. And some of them are necessary, some of them not necessary. And some of them have passwords, some of them don't, but they find them. And that's one way that they go into networks, and it's just devastating what can happen. So I don't want to scare small business owners too much about that. There's certain things you can do. And the most important is train your employees in proper email hygiene and how to deal with that.
Okay, great. So we actually sort of covered 4 things rather than 3. So everybody got a bonus. But this has been great. Before you go, I just want to have you take a minute and just share the 3 key things that people should take away from the show, because a lot of times people can only remember 3 things, as well as, it just allows you to focus when you leave here and have some actionable things to work on as they go. So I'm going to play a short video about special offer we have for business owners, and then we'll come back and hear Paul's top 3. So here you go. Ever wonder why some businesses succeed while other ones flounder or just plain fail? It's all about having a solid game plan, knowing what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, because your business can only go as far as you're prepared to take. How can you acquire the knowledge, the skills, and perspective that you need to succeed? What if you could learn the secret sauce in a matter of hours from the comfort of your own home or office? Now you can. I'm Andrew Frazier. I've written a series of books outlining my proven proprietary Masterpreneur playbook framework that has helped more than 1,000 business owners to succeed. By reading the handbook and completing the workbook exercises chapter by chapter, you will actively learn how to become more effective at sales, marketing, financial management, operations, and more. Then, the playbook will guide you through the critical stages of business development and personal evolution necessary to work on your business and scale it successfully. As a result, you will create a sustainable business that can run successfully without you. Here's what others are saying about my methods.
Andrew's books are outstanding. They're easy to read. They're interesting to read, and they will take you every step of the way from startup to scaling if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to put in the time.
Good practical information that is good for both entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs. Andrew breaks it down in a very understandable way.
He's been helping me with my financials, making sure everything's together, what's working versus what's not working in my business, so that I'm working on my business and not in my business, period.
If you want to work on your business and scale successfully, you need my Masterpreneur combo, the handbook, the workbook, and the playbook. Act now to take advantage of a special offer for my Masterpreneur combo and save over 25%. I'll also sign and ship all 3 books for free. This is a limited time offer that can only be accessed using the direct link below. www.sbpru.com/combo. Get your Masterpreneur combo today. Once again, that's www.sbpru.com/combo. Okay, excellent. So get your combo today if you're looking to grow your business and be more successful. So we covered a lot of great stuff today, Paul, and definitely appreciate the opportunity to have you on here to share your expertise. But what are the top 3 things people should take away from our discussion today?
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you again for having me. I would say the last thing we discussed probably should be the first, which is don't assume that your employees have good email hygiene and can avoid phishing, whether it's phishing, spear phishing, or all the other things that take place on a daily basis. So I would say that that's one. Number 2 would be, I saw on your video just now, Masterpreneur had a TM next to it. So the second thing I would say is don't ignore your intellectual property and don't neglect to protect it. So you should protect what you have because it is something that is valuable and can lead to a significant amount of money for you down the road, and can certainly allow you to compete better in the market. Number three, I would suggest that you join groups and learn from others. Join associations, buy sort of materials that you're selling that help on a broad level, but more specifically, join associations where people and companies like yourself congregate. I think that's very important. Get resources that are free. There are a lot of resources by NIST, for example, on cybersecurity, National Institute of Standards and Technology. I would make sure that you take advantage of all those resources. SBA also has some good resources for small business owners in the area of cybersecurity. So that's what I would do. Those three things.
Okay, excellent. So, yeah, we covered a lot of stuff, but definitely you're making sure that you're, protecting yourself from a cybersecurity standpoint. Making sure your intellectual property is protected. Actually, I'm in the middle of doing some more of that. So as you can see, the TM, and I'm really thinking through all the things I need to protect, because I've created a lot of assets, intellectual assets. Number three, groups. I mean, I think just at the end of the day, even just being in groups of business owners, I have business owners I meet with regularly, clients, but also just non-clients, so that we can share our learnings, our opportunities and everything. And, this is another thing that you should be sharing with other people and hear what they're doing. So this has been great, Paul. Thanks again for hanging out with me this evening.
My pleasure.
Definitely going to put your LinkedIn up once again in the chat. Definitely, you're welcome to connect with Paul on LinkedIn. So we've got his profile there.
Just for the record, I deleted 1,000 LinkedIn contacts as an experiment a number of months ago. So anyway.
Okay. So it'll be easier for him to
contact me.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we got his website as well. That's your main website, right?
Yes.
And then
the main is license, LICENZ.
Okay. So that's your personal one, I guess. And then let's see, where's the license? It's in here. Yep. It's in here. It's in there. So there's your main website there. So definitely anyone who wants to follow up with him about any of these items or other things that he does, you have the means to do so. So thanks again for joining us. If you can hang out for a little bit, I'm going to close out and then we'll just catch up afterwards for a minute. So excellent. So once again, thanks. Appreciate everybody joining in. Appreciate your great comments, questions, and definitely at this time of year, wishing you happy holidays. So next week, you've got both, all three, Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa fall next week. So at least all of them start next week. So we got a big week as far as holidays. This year, Leadership Live falls on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So, of course, we're not doing a show on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. But what we're going to do is we're going to shift our show to Monday night. So we'll do Monday night the 23rd and Monday night the 30th. So you're welcome to join us if you're around and available. Next week, we're going to focus on, we're going to keep it as a open office hour. So, definitely any questions you as a business owner want to chat about or share, I'd be glad to spend some time answering them. And then I do also want to talk a little bit about customer-centric communications. So ways to communicate more effectively with your customers. And then at the end of the year, we're going to do our best of 2024. So, we've got highlights from many of the shows of 2024 that we're going to share, and just really a lot of valuable learning and knowledge. So hopefully you can join us at one or both of those. And definitely wishing you happy holidays, and hope that you get a chance to really spend some time, not just not necessarily working, but also planning, thinking through what your next year is. And my goal is to make next year my best year ever, and hopefully I can help you do that as well. So we got the best of 2024, being ready to go into 2025. And always, at the end of the day, the more that you know, the more successfully your business is going to grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.